When most people hear that a hurricane's coming, you go to the store, you get water, food, batteries, you prepare.
For the folks that are experiencing homelessness, the reality of it is just where are they going to go? Because the woods is the worst place to be because of the trees and falling limbs and debris flying around.
For those who are out there during this hurricane, the sun comes out and then what happens? Because they're still in fight mode.
They really just have to start over when they work so hard to gather their lives back. What is normal for them gets destroyed in just a day or two. It's always a tough struggle.
One of our female guests in Brevard pulled me aside yesterday and she started to tear up. She goes, "When am I going to get a break?"
Mm-hmm.
She goes, "I've been raped. I have been beaten. I have lost my family. I've lost my health. The storm of the last few days," she goes, "everything I have is gone." The look of devastation in her face. I can tell you we are seeing more suicides than we have ever seen since the pandemic, and the level of mental beatdown that these people are experiencing when they're already trying to deal with, I don't know where I'm going to go.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy Lewis with We Are Winter Garden, and I am joined by Pastor Scott, who is the founder and CEO of Matthew's Hope, and Shelley, who is the president and executive director of Matthew's Hope. We are on episode 45 of Straight Talk, No BS with Matthew's Hope, where we're going to be talking about hurricane season and how that can affect those out there who are homeless. Hurricane season runs from June 1st through November 30th, and we recently went through Hurricane Debby, the first one of the season. When most people hear that a hurricane's coming, especially if you're on the coast, you go to the store, you get water, food, batteries, you prepare. What does it look like for those who are experiencing homelessness?
Well, there's kind of two ways to answer that. For the folks that are experiencing homelessness, the reality of it is just where are they going to go? Because the challenge is typically in at least the two counties that we serve, by the time they let people know where the shelters are, it's too late for the homeless to react. Mm-hmm. So they depend on places like Matthew's Hope, which are few and far between, to care for them when they're in the danger zone, if you will. And then for us, we prepare like everybody else does, except we're preparing for a family of how many? The last hurricane that we had to shelter for 2 years ago, right after we opened, each of our locations averaged about 65 men, women, and children at each location. Yeah. To house those people for a couple of days, feeding them, blankets, everything that you need for that, you go through a lot of resources really quick. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But even if the storm doesn't hit, which Debbie did not hit us directly, the amount of rain it poured, we had to up the level of support to the folks that we care for this week, because a lot of what they was ruined by the storms and mostly by the rain, the excessive rain.
So churches, do they open their doors? Because there's so many churches, and I assume that they're not having service. So do they open their doors to help house?
That's actually how we got started. Okay. Just not in a hurricane season, in a cold shelter.
And not necessarily in a welcoming manner.
Right.
The reality of it is
so they don't have anything in place where they're like, "Oh, no. Hey, here's a hurricane." It's more or less you call them and be like, "We need to do something."
Yeah, I've been a pastor for longer than I can remember at this point, over 20 years. And the challenge is churches as a whole don't do that type of thing. I'm not saying none of them do.
Sure.
But as a general statement, the church is typically the last to step to the plate in that. And in fairness to the churches, for a number of different reasons. One is because our churches are older. When I say that, I mean our demographic is older, and those people are just trying to fear for their own safety, much less make their way into a storm to spend the night with homeless people and what have you.
Right.
Okay. churches are not financed the way they used to be. I grew up in a time in my life when tithing is what you did. Even if you didn't go to church that Sunday, you dropped the check off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So most people that live in houses, they start to prepare for that. They have plywood, they put away everything. But what about those who are living in the woods? How do they prepare for a hurricane when they are out in the elements? We don't step outside when there's a hurricane, really, maybe to get some social media, something or whatnot. But I could not imagine just standing outside in the woods during a hurricane.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that have happened and should happen that won't happen. And here's the best way I know how to describe it. So they pretty much depend on organizations like Matthew's Hope to keep them in the loop of how close is this getting, to what level, what do we need to do? Take Matthew's Hope out of that. You got a real issue because a lot of times we're protecting their private possessions. We're protecting their IDs, their birth certificates, their social security cards. So when storms happen, a lot of that stuff we come into possession of and lock that up into a safe place. We have places to do that.
Okay.
And then what they try to do with their personal belongings in the past, what they would do is sometimes they've asked us to bring a certain amount of things here, and depending on what it was, what the value was, we've brought them into our places to be safe. We're limited to what we can do. Not everybody can drive a moving truck up to Matthew's Hope and drop their stuff off. But with the some people might notice the banner behind us, and that has to do with HB 1365, which is a new law that goes into effect October 1st, oddly enough, in the middle of hurricane season. And that allows nobody to sleep in public places. Now, think about this for a minute. You've grabbed what little you own, which is close to nothing. If you're working, the things that you do own are probably required in there because you probably have your ID and those type of things, your social security card and what have you. Now, normally what would happen is those folks would go to an underpass. They would go to the park into where there's different buildings they can try to either get behind or into. Sad to say, sometimes, when I was homeless, I watched people sleep in bathrooms. It's not public bathrooms. It's not something I ever did or can see myself doing, but but when it comes to storm, they're just looking for shelter or at least a way to get behind something that may protect them, because the woods is the worst place to be because of the trees and falling limbs and debris flying around. And the truth is, we've had some folks in the past that have tried to secure their tent, put tarps over it and try to wrap everything in tarps to keep dry, only to come either to stay and have that wiped out and literally come knocking at our door, in the middle of the storm because they thought we got this.
Yeah.
Or realized that they did that and left thinking they had done everything they could to secure what little belongings they had, and the tent's destroyed, the tarp is gone, the backpack, if they left it there, it goes on. Pretty much like this past week with all the rain.
For hours, not just
for
afternoon, for days.
For days.
It just happened again yesterday.
Their shoes are wet, their feet are wet, their hair is wet. So Scott, you said that they used to go to a public place or an underpass or find shelter somewhere.
Yeah, with this new law going into effect, it really limits them because you basically can't go any place in public that you might fall asleep. Mm-hmm. Now, whether you're going to sleep during a storm or not, okay, but you're probably going to lay your head down. How long can one person stand up or sit up or what have you? But the new law, it prevents it to be legal anywhere to sleep in public. Mm-hmm. And so we really don't know what the answer is going to be if Matthew's Hope were to say no longer exist, or that other organizations or churches or somebody didn't open their doors to them.
Right.
We don't know. We're learning about this
as we go. And it really seems like there is no answer right now to any of it.
And to me, no answer is not. We've been saying it for a while. Not here is not a plan. Mm-hmm. It's not an answer. It's not a plan. Mm-hmm. So I will tell you that there has been some municipalities that have asked us, "Will you open? Will you do this? Will you do that?" But they have not made any effort to coordinate with us to help us make those things happen. Now, the other side of that is I will tell you that we have had several individual deputy sheriffs and police officers from the different municipalities we work with throw somebody in their car and bring them themselves, whether that was the policy of the city they worked in or not. They did that on their own. They took mercy, for lack of a better term, on those folks and try to get them into a safe place. But there's not at least not with us.
Right.
There's no policy in place. There's no coordination in place. And we are even at the mercy of the municipalities, typically the counties, saying, okay, we're going to open up a shelter here, here, and here. And because it happens so late at times, the average person can probably get there because they're in a car. We have to pick these pick these people up in buses. When that wind kicks up over about 30, 35 miles an hour, riding those buses is like trying to fly a kite.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, we're putting ourselves or our drivers in danger, and it's usually not our drivers. It's usually I become a bus driver.
Yeah. None of us.
So you guys are working 24/7 during these storms.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. The last one, I personally didn't sleep for 78 hours.
Wow.
I was a mess for a few days afterwards.
Oh, I'm sure.
But we had, because again, we have so few, most of our volunteers are I want to say older. Now that I'm 62, I'm sure not, I don't know what that means anymore, but are older, and they're probably not going to volunteer to spend the night or come out into a storm.
Right.
Currently, I can tell you that I have asked, and Shelley has given the directive to each of our campus directors and to our volunteer coordinators to continue to develop that list of those that will help us with meals, are willing to take a 4 to 8 hour shift, to offer to maybe buy blankets and pillows and the things that we need. Because quite honestly, when we're done with all those things, two things: they're not really have much value after we're done with them, and they're very hard to store.
Right.
And most of that stuff you can't wash. So it's kind of like, okay, you got a one-time use. And so, you don't have like 100 pillows sitting in the warehouse waiting to come out.
Right.
Okay. We have in the past, when we had the space, we got like pillow covers and stuff. But even then, it's a bigger task than people think it is.
Right. So Shelley, Scott was mentioning that he was awake for so many hours or days, but he got to go home. He got to go home to a dry bed. He got to take a warm shower,
put
on his pajamas, turn on the AC, and rest. For those who are out there during this hurricane, the sun comes out, and then what happens? Because they're still in like fight mode. Right. So how is that? How does that work for somebody?
They really just have to start over, and a lot of times they're starting over with minimal sleep, not knowing what to do next, and so they need people like us with cool heads to walk alongside them and say, okay, let's walk through this one step at a time, because you're not going to fix it all right away.
Gotcha.
And a lot of times, when they work so hard to gather their lives back, what is normal for them gets destroyed in just a day or two. It's always a tough struggle. So just walking them through the process of rebuilding, hopefully we've saved your IDs. If not, we've got to just start from scratch all over again. And for me, that's exhausting.
Yep.
So I can't imagine what
just to think about.
Just to think about it.
Right.
So just for me, but then for a homeless person, it's just a whole nother level of stress.
Well,
I had one of our female guests in Brevard pull me aside yesterday. People are always trying to grab me because they think, well, Scott will give me the answer I'm looking for.
Yeah, you're the boss.
So I typically avoid and say, hey, you want to be talking to so-and-so and run up the chain, and if they need me, they'll get me. But she said, can you give me a moment? And I said, I can give you about 2 seconds. Okay. Because that's usually my easy way out to I can go get her. And she says, she goes, Pastor Scott, and she started to tear up. She goes, when am I going to get a break? She goes, I've been raped. I have been beaten. I have lost my family. I've lost my health. And she goes, the storm of the last few days, she goes, everything I have is gone. And I just said to her, I said, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do, I said, we have a mental health care counselor. And I said, I really would like you. I'm going to open the door. It's not going to cost you anything to speak to her. And I said, the second thing is I'm going to ask you to lean deep in your faith. And she goes, but that's so hard to do because does God even care? We know the pastoral answer. I know the right answer. But the look of devastation in her face, I just wanted to drop her in, much like a child, and just tell her it's going to be okay. And that's pretty much what I did, because there's no one easy answer. I can tell you, we are seeing more suicides than we have ever seen since the pandemic. And I think it's something as simple as a storm. I've lived in storm my whole life. I don't remember having storms like this all the time. I just don't. But even when I was homeless, I don't remember having storms like this. But the level of devastation and the level of mental beatdown that these people are experiencing when they're already trying to deal with, I don't know where I'm going to go. I mean, we've had deputy sheriffs go out to the camp in our county and here in Brevard that say, don't worry, come October 1st, you aren't going to be here. That works on somebody, because when you have nothing and you've lost everything, let's touch on something. Some people say, well, they brought it on themselves. And my answer is what's your point? Okay, what's your point? Most haven't, but does it really matter when somebody has finally got to that point where, like this young lady was yesterday, where she just is lost and she's saying, nobody cares. I had another gentleman yesterday say to my girls, I wish God would just let me die. Because he says, I've been moved 3 times in the last week. The storm, I wish he would just let me die. And the sad part is, as a Christian that is watching the Christian right take on this belief that this is okay, I myself am questioning. What do we do? You try to, you have to be, when you're with them. I can't let my emotions out. I try not to here.
But it's real.
It's
happening.
And I get in my truck and sometimes just sit there and cry. We're out of money. We are out of patience. We don't have enough of anything. And everybody's calling, what are you going to do next when the storm comes? And I'm sitting there going, you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. And we put the call out on social media and what have you, that we have these needs. But the truth is, we're broke. We're borrowing money to stay open. But if not us, then who? And you see the storm come on and you're sitting there kind of going, much like she was saying, I'm sitting in my car going, what else? Thank you. May I have another? If you remember that. Right? Thank you. May I have another? No, I don't want another. I'm good. I've had enough. But in the meantime, till either Christ returns or God takes me home, we're going to keep fighting the good fight, and we're going to figure out, as we have in the past. Last time we opened the shelters for Brevard, there's 4 of us.
Right.
Right. Wild.
4 of us and 65 people. Okay. Right. And somehow, within a couple of days, we managed to get everybody a pillow everybody, I mean, we only had a very short notice it was coming, and we weren't open. We technically weren't open. And we figured out how to house and feed and even shower 65 people. We made a made-up shower in the bathroom. I went and got one of those things that we can hook to a faucet, and I zip tied. I zip tied a shower head on the side of of the bathroom stall, and we had concrete floors. And then I took these plastic things and I made it so it would work. The water would work towards the drain, and we only had cold water. Can I tell you that everybody was thankful for that cold water shower?
Oh my gosh.
And I wish I had taken pictures of it because it was so Neanderthal, but it's getting outside the box. And I think that when you are faced with these type of things, when you're faced with people losing everything and you're faced with their emotions, and I know this is more than anybody wanted to ask or talk about, but a lot of emotions plays in this, and it takes a toll on my staff. My volunteers some too, but my staff are in it 24/7. We don't go to bed. We don't lay our head down at night and don't think about it again until the next day. It just rolls through us all the time. And so all that to say is mental health plays a huge role. And as we watch these people lose everything, the problem is even when you're able to replace things for them, what you can't replace is the piece of their soul that has been ripped from them.
Right.
And I think that's the toughest thing to see is when your homelessness is basically being made illegal. You're out there with your child, or your child is in the care of someone else, okay, during a storm. I mean, think about this as a mom. You both are moms. And you're separated from your child during a storm. As moms, your first thought is, my child.
Yeah.
But you can't be with your child. You're just hoping that wherever your child is, that they're safe.
Yeah.
But I'm not a mom. Asking either one of you, do you feel comfortable with that?
No.
Even if you know the people.
Right.
They're your babies. They're your kids. Okay? And again, people got to realize that over 30%, roughly 1/3, I think it's actually, we're slightly over 1/3 right now. I think we're at 34% of all our guests are women.
No.
Okay. And the bulk of them are mothers. Even if they're mothers of adult children. I can tell you as a father that my kids don't leave my mind. They're all in their 30s. They don't leave my mind daily. And whenever something comes up, I'm always wondering, are they okay?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And I think a mom's love goes very much deeper than that.
It's very true. So
Sorry,
it sounds
guys.
like you guys need help, and especially during the hurricane season. So Shelley, what are some things that you specifically need during the hurricane season?
I mean, specifically blankets, tarps, pillows. But keep in mind, these things will leave, that they're a one-time use, just like Scott said earlier. So not heavy blankets, just, thin blankets, but still substantial.
Like if you've ever been to the hospital, a hospital blanket, that lighter blanket, it does the job.
Yeah. Keeps you warm.
Bed mats also, there's folding type mats to put under people that they can not be on a concrete floor.
For a season, we had people make these bed mats out of plastic T-shirts, T-shirt bags that you get at Publix and stuff like that. Those were perfect because they roll up, they go small, and they can take them and use them over and over again.
Gotcha.
Yeah, those last better than anything because they don't absorb anything.
Yeah.
They don't get dirt. I mean, they don't really get dirty. They're grocery bag.
So Shelley, you mentioned some things. Where can people find the full list and where to bring them?
Sure. So then go to our social media, and that includes Facebook, Instagram, and we actually have specific for each location, the Orange County, Brevard, Matthews Hope, Orange County, as well as Matthews Hope, Brevard. I was trying to put them all both together. Why not? And then, like I said, we really try to do our best to keep those lists as up to date as possible. You can call us, or you can also shop on our Amazon wish list as well.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm preparing we've been preparing a specific list, and it actually is named storm on it. It's in the name.
Perfect.
So if they look at the different lists, they'll see storm of the specific needs for a storm. And just understand this also is like Shelley said, it changes constantly. So a lot of times, even a phone call, we don't know that 100 of something just came in the back door.
Right.
But the minute we do, what we will do is then we will go back to social media, go back to Facebook and update that list and say, okay, here's where we're at now. Because the worst thing that can happen, and it has happened at times, is everybody decides to bring a blanket. Let me also be clear on this too, is I don't want people bringing us their comforters or their old sleeping bags.
Okay.
I don't want to sound ungrateful,
Right.
but because the thing is I can't give everybody one. I can't give just a few.
Right.
And we will probably house a lot more than 65 this time, especially in Brevard, because we have more space. I fully expect that the sanctuary will be full this time too. But what we do for one, we need to be able to do for all.
Sure.
But the other part is they're very hard to store, because here's the other thing that comes into play here. Our floors become one big sleeping bed. Okay.
Slumber party.
Yeah. Well, we do play homeless karaoke and stuff like that.
fun.
So it's not all bad. It's pretty crazy how Matthew's Hope does things, because we want the hard part when we're done with the storm, they don't want to leave.
Yeah.
Because
we're like, you got to go.
Yeah.
We're tired.
we're having a great time and we're being fed well and what have you. But we don't want somebody just all of a sudden let's say just everybody brings us blankets, but we don't have the pillows. We don't have the food. We don't have the other thing. So we try to, a lot of people, I have taken grief and I apologize profusely. It's not that we're ungrateful, but we have limited space and we know what our need is. So we try to put our our needs as specific as possible, and try to keep that updated so that we aren't overwhelmed with something we can't use. Because it's kind of like, if you got a bunch of surgeons, that's great. But if you have no scalpels or no blood transfusions, you're in trouble.
Right.
And so we have to make sure we're covering all those things.
And for the Amazon wish list, where can they find that? Would that be on Facebook, Instagram, website?
Yes, we actually, in our post, what happens right now, if you were to look, you will see a list of items, and then we tell you how to get those to us and what have you. And then we put a link right there that they can go to that list.
Nice.
And
it's location specific.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So now understand this too, because I've learned this too, is that often you as the individual have to say, when you go in there, that you want it shipped to Brevard address or to Orange.
Okay.
Because what happens is it will pick up whoever the last one was,
That ordered.
Orange, then it will go right to that, automatically assume it's going to go to Orange County. So you have to sit there and go, no, Brevard.
So let's just make sure. Before
but the information's
checking
there.
out,
They just have to
specify
There's that
which
one
location.
more step, unfortunately.
Easy enough. Well, that is very helpful. And I hope that the community and myself even can go on that Amazon wish list, because I love the wish list because it goes directly to you guys and be able to help you. Shelley, do you want to add anything before we wrap up?
I think all of that was great. I mean,
good. So the community, we can step up, go to social media, Facebook, Instagram, website, and see what you guys are needing during this hurricane season time, and volunteers too. It sounds like there's lots of different things for them to do.
Our need is 24/7, 365
not just
days.
hurricane season.
We're the only place I know of at all, anywhere, that has never shut its doors. And, whether it was pandemic, whatever, we never shut our doors. We reevaluated, we adjusted. A lot of that's because a very small percentage of our budget is government funding. It's like 6.2%. Out of 15 million, that's not a lot. So, our need is 24/7, 365. But when these things happen, the other thing I want to say before we close is what a lot of people don't appreciate too, is that the crisis happens, we address the crisis. We typically went from, let's say normally we serve 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. In Brevard, we serve about 8 meals a week. Okay. Times, a few hundred. But all of a sudden now you're taking that and you're doing 3 meals a day, snacks, water, fluids, the whole 9 yards. We can go through a week's worth of resources in a 24-hour period. So after the storm, often what happens is not are we trying to replace things and all that kind of stuff, but we also find that our shelves are empty. And so, the hardest part about this, at least for me, is that it sounds like we always have our hand out, and we do. But I also want to tell people we look at our donors as investors, and our investors should expect a return on their investment. And I think we can show them that.
That's great. And for people who are, buying all these waters and then they're like, oh, I don't need these waters. It's a great opportunity for them to donate them
for sure.
We will take them. We will never have too much water.
Great. Yes. Well, thank you both for sharing that and explaining a little bit more about what you guys do during the hurricane season, how we can help you guys, and then also how we can help them help themselves as well. So thank you guys for listening, watching. Please like, share, comment. We are the best of the best podcast. So please share that with your friends and on your social media. Thanks, and see you next time.